Today's episode is mainly about one character, Karsa Orlong. The discussion has spoilers up to the fourth book in the Book of the Fallen, House of Chains.
Please note that this episode, just like the source material, covers a fair amount of sensitive topics like rape, violence, and body horror. Anyway, we hope you enjoy the discussion. Hi Lee, thanks for joining me. So, Karsa Orlong, what was your first impression when you read the book for the first time?
My first read actually sped through most of the books early on, so I was just churning through the books. I didn't pay too much attention on every individual character. Karsa, on the one hand, he's, this cool stereotypical barbarian that slaughters fools and children. And on one hand, it's a bit hard to deny that he's badass. He's not just talking out his ass, and he does actually have the skills required to live up to his words. On the other hand, many of his actions are reprehensible and not particularly great. So it was mostly on retrospect that I actually ended up thinking more about Karsa. When I read House of Chains, I was like, okay, yeah, let's go kick some witness and shit. Then I got the Bone Hunters and Reaper's Gale, and I started thinking more about Karsa, and like, hang on, that wasn't good. I should not be rooting for this guy. Not then. So I think when I was actually reading House of Chains for the first time, I wasn't too apprehensive for Karsa. But as the books went on,
You weren't put off by all his...
I was slightly. I mean, at the start I was, but it's like, okay, yeah, it's fine. He's a barbarian, we went through this house gates, and there was some standard set up about the levels of brutality in the series, and in hindsight, compared to like the Seven Sisters Rebellion or the Panian Domin, Karsa is a bit on the low side. So on one hand, it is a bit, it's not very nice. On the other hand, it seems to be generally accepted, so to speak, because it's tribal warfare. This sort of thing happens between the Tableau. When he goes on his raid on Silver Lake is when things start going downhill, but by then you're kind of more or less accepted that Karsa is this way, and you can now stick with him for a bit. So I was not the biggest fan of Karsa at the start, but I think my image of him only solidified until I got in like book 6 or book 7. And if you're wondering, the image is not particularly great. Certainly not for House of Chains. I was not the biggest fan of Karsa at the time. I'll just say that. Your experience might be different.
Yeah, it was very different. I couldn't stand him at all,
Indeed.
I had some idea that Karsa is this, fan favorite character and all, because so many people on the subreddit have Karsa in their name.
Yes.
Karsa and Witness and stuff. But anyway, I thought, okay, so Karsa is this, extremely nice guy, somebody like Anamander Rake or something. And, I was really looking forward to his story. And yeah, it was extremely disillusioning, when I started reading. And yeah, obviously, I guess about halfway that when he says children, that he actually means like normal human people. But then I was also wondering, how is his horse so big? And then that turns out to be a separate plot point, which was really nice having these jag horses and stuff. Yeah, so that's how it started actually. I couldn't stand Karsa. I didn't want to read about him. And, it just took slowly, just in those 4 chapters, it slowly started shifting from can't stand the guy, can't listen to him, talking arrogantly and all. And I think I've told you this, I was so sure that Bayroth is going to be the ultimate hero and Karsa is going to get killed pretty soon, right? So that is what I was expecting because Bayroth was, he was the one who was actually smart and who had his eyes open basically. He guessed that Silver Lake is, their information about Silver Lake is quite old and all those things.
Which should be, in hindsight, common sense that Palak went and read 400 years ago and things should have probably changed.
Yeah, they expected the change to be small, right?
So, yeah.
Like maybe there are a few more farmhouses.
Yeah, Karsa was like, Palak went and raided 2 farmhouses and I'm going to find 3 or 4. It's going to be so much better. And he happens to want a whole town with fortification and stuff.
It's actually an enclosed town now.
Yes.
And to their luck, I think they had Malazan standing there at that time. Yeah, so there is ultimate bad luck for them to pop in at that time. But yeah, by the end of it, after him meeting Torvald and all the other stuff, I was completely behind Karsa, Team Karsa, So and it always made me curious, even when I read that time, the first time also, that how in these like 100, 200 pages, how was I able to change my mind 180 degrees from absolutely hating the guy to being, a proper fan.
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to look for in this reread. How did you find the reread now? Were you still thinking he's a badass, or was it hard to get through some of the stuff?
I mean, I wouldn't say hard. I mean, after you get the entire series, it's a bit easier because, again, in the grand scheme of things, Karsa's story is very personal. His brutalities, his atrocities are on a very personal level against the lowlanders, against the Sunid or some such, not an entire continent's worth like in the other books. On the other hand, this does not do much to lessen the impact of all the bad stuff he does.
Yeah, but the difference is with Karsa, you see it, from the driver's seat.
That is also true, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the hardest part. It's one thing to just read Bidithal doing all this stuff, but another thing to, actually see everything from Karsa's POV, him going around slicing people and raping people and stuff. I didn't find it easier even this time.
It's interesting because when I first I remember very vividly that on my first read, I took notice of like him saying, "I'm gonna go slay children," and I was somehow okay with it because it hadn't exactly ticked on my mind that Karsa is small. He always seemed and behaved as if he was a giant. So like, okay, he doesn't mean actual children, does he? And then there was like House of Chains, actually, chapter 1 opens up with a child being sacrificed to Faces in the Rock. I'm like, hang on, what if he actually does mean children? And thankfully that was quickly dispelled because Karsa is apparently 7 foot tall or something. So it did actually end up mattering. But I started up being like, oh yeah, he's just gonna slay children. And then the realization strikes me that he's gonna kill children, and then it's fine because children are actually just normal people. So, which leads us to the start of Karsa's story, right? You would think Karsa behaves, I think in the House Gates, Leomund refers to him as 17.
Yeah.
When in Ruth, Karsa is 80. So.
Yeah, they age slowly.
Yeah, but like, there's obviously a very big difference between the two because Karsa is not some 18-year-old out for glory. He's an 80-year-old out for glory.
Yeah, but he's an 80-year-old behaving exactly like a 17-year-old, right?
To be fair, for Tebro standards, yes, he is barely an adolescent, but
he doesn't like Heboric and he says, I'm not going to talk to you. That's exactly something an 18-year-old would do. Sorry, continue, please.
So, he also has an idol, right, in Palk, and also detests Sinig, his father, because he sees him as a weakling, as someone who does not want to continue the tribal legacy of Palk and his raids, which were, again, 4 centuries ago. This is important to stress that Palk's last raid, and possibly the first one, was 400 years ago, and pretty much that was the best raid the entire Tebro have done on lowlander land ever. So the signs of stagnation are present, the signs of decadence are present, but everyone seemingly, at least everyone that isn't Sinig or Byreth, seems to be completely impervious to the whole thing that's going on. Like, it's fine. We went on raid 400 years ago. We're going to do it again. It's fine. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I think 400 years is what? Maybe like 20 years in our time?
I mean, 400 years for the Tableau, if we take that adult Tableau are 80 years old, that'd be 5 adults, which is 80 years. So it's not that huge a discrepancy, but it's like 2 generations, right? So his last raid was 2 generations ago, and they're like, we're going to do it again. It's going to be great.
But that's the point of Tableau society, right? They are in stasis.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, with all the, whatever was there in the cave writings, this is what they have decided. They want to stay in stasis and sort of become, just consolidate their numbers, basically. So it makes sense that they think that nothing is changing. The outside world is the same because their inside world is the same.
Yes.
And they don't have contact with anyone else also, right?
Not that I know of. No, beyond the Faces in the Rock, there's no other contact.
I think even with the other tribes, it's occasional and it's usually just raiding and stuff.
Yeah, it's usually, yeah. So let's take it from that's our prelude, so to speak. So Karsa's journey starts off, and he's in the Ledron Plateau, in the Urid village or whatever. So we learn that the Faces of the Rock are the gods of all the Teblo, not just the Urid. And we sort of have this idea that because the first interaction we have with the Faces in the Rock is that they are having children sacrificed to them, that they're not particularly great people.
Yeah, true.
So we actually learn a few things about Karsa's family, slowly. For one, we have Sinig, his father, who he hates because he sees as a weakling. and someone who doesn't actually want to continue Tabor society and Tabor legacy that was left off behind by his father. Now, we learned that Sinnig has actually taught Karsa quite a few things: how to ride, how to dance with a sword,
The sword dance, yeah.
the martial arts and stuff. And Karsa's like, yeah, that's what everyone should do. That's the standard for a father in Tabor society. No, my father should be a warrior like my granddad and like I will be and stuff. And we know that Karsa's mother is actually dead. And only later do we learn that Karsa's mother died by Sibal's hand because she was, or Sibale, I don't actually know.
One of the Tableau gods, basically.
Yes, because she was finding out that the children that were being sacrificed weren't actually sacrificed. And so they killed her. Sinnig is pretty much on the same trail and has an idea, but doesn't act on it, so he won't die. So we know that much of Karsa's story.
Yeah, but you know what you realize, because both his parents are pretty rational thinkers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So him being really smart and able to strategize so well and all his, quick language learning prowess and all that, he has really smart parents. His grandfather is a coward and idiot. But I think his parents are,
I think calling him an idiot is a bit of a bad, really. So, in a way, Palk is basically the personification of everything that's wrong with Tabor society, and eventually sort of becomes the mirror that Karsa sees civilization through, right? Because Palk essentially embodies in Tabor society what is stagnation, essentially, where they go on raids because that's the right thing to do, because that is what they've been taught by their forefathers, because that's what they're good at, trading or raising sheep or any of that. They're warriors, they must raid, because that's what they took from those cave writings you mentioned earlier that we find later. Sinnig and Karsa's mother go against that, and Karsa views them as failures because his father doesn't seem particularly in high esteem by the other members of the tribe, or Palk, and his mother's dead. On one hand, yes, Palk isn't the smartest individual. On the other hand, he's also a product of Tabor society, just like Karsa is.
No, the thing is, Palk seems to be the only one who has actually gone on a raid, right? So
it was a solo raid, yes.
I mean, not just solo, but in the entire tribe.
I don't know if anyone else has done it before, I presume.
It's just that it seems really odd that Karsa is so angry with his dad when, nobody else has actually done anything. It's a little misplaced, but then he's really young, so...
I think Palk's novelty is that he went on a raid against Lowlanders, whereas everyone else basically kept infighting with the Tableau. Because you may remember, again, in the cave writings, I'm skipping ahead again, in the cave writings they say that we will legitimize rape because we need to clean the blood. And so different tribes will raid one another and then forcefully mate with the women of the other tribe so as to clean the blood of the Tableau and make it cleaner and not mix with Lowlanders. When Palk went on a raid on Lowlanders, that hadn't been done before because they hadn't been taught how to do that or why they should do that.
Yeah, but even when he went to the Rathid, what do you call that tribe?
Yeah, Rathid.
Yeah, even when he goes to that tribe, he doesn't really, raid them. He just asks them for safe passage and just moves on, right? I don't know, Palk is...
Yeah, contrast that to what Byroth later tells Karsa. When they return, they should say that their elders came to meet them, that their elders were there and blessed them. Because the point of the raid shouldn't be to sow discontent and discord among the Tableau tribes.
Yeah,
In a way, if Palk told them that, guys, I went over to the Rathid, begged them for food and passage, killed them, and then went down to the Lowlands and did the same thing, he'd look stupid. So, on the one hand, he's after personal glory because he wants to glorify himself as this great conqueror and stuff. On the other hand, if he lies, there could be a great rift between the Urid.
Yeah, but...
What's next? We're going to Wiz War Party.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to you because you seem to quite like Byroth.
Oh, Byroth is the man. I mean, okay, so Byroth, for one thing, he's actually smart. Compared to the other Tableau and all. His speaking style, everything is different. He sort of sounds like a modern character, He's sarcastic and he talks with nuance. At one point, I believe he says something like, Karsa, I hope you never ever experience doubt or something. And the next sentence he says, no, I lied. I wish you learn some doubt and, grow your wisdom through doubts and stuff. So, yeah, I was really rooting for that guy. So Byroth and Delam. So this was a nice party, but maybe Delam was sort of superfluous. I'm not really sure what was his role in their party actually. probably his brain damage allowed Karsa to imitate him when they start going on that long ship journey, right? Other than that, I don't see the role of Dayliss in this particular war party. Probably because was he part of the game they played? Was Dayliss a played character? I'm not sure.
I think Karsa was the only player who played character among the three.
The other two were just created for the book?
The other two were created from Steve as NPCs to accompany Karsa.
Oh, so these characters were part of the game, right? So that's why they must have included
I think so.
He really doesn't have an actual role in the story.
I don't know if I agree with that. So Byrov obviously talks with nuance and is sarcastic and is very caustic, and he judges Karsa a lot. On the one hand, he's pretty much obligated by his role as a second to the war leader to obey him and follow his commands. On the other hand, he disagrees a lot and also has a professional conflict of interest because he's betrothed and then he's going to be married to the girl that Karsa wants, and there's a conflict there. Dayliss, on the other hand, doesn't have that. Dayliss is just there to provide wisdom, and he's a capable tracker. He hunts for game. He's cunning and smart in his own way, because you may remember Karsa took him along to find the dogs, and he's like, okay, you sit here and I trust you'll know what to do when you see me do something.
Oh yeah, that is
and
good.
And then Karsa jumps the dog, and when another dog approaches, Dayliss kills it from like 10 meters. So, and furthermore, later in the book, when the two of them die, and Karsa has his journey to Raraku, and then leaves to go out to Jagodan, Karsa mentions Byrov as like biting commentary, but he refers to Dayliss as not necessarily loyalty, but measured wisdom.
Okay.
The inner monologues that Karsa has essentially with himself, masquerading as his friends, Dayliss to him is more wise and more suitable to give him advice than Byrov is.
So do you really think they're not his actual friends? Do you think it's just Karsa imagining it?
I mean, I'm pretty sure they're actually there because of different, for one, the blessing on the sword, and for two, Urigal's influence. But I think in large part, he also plays them up a lot more.
Okay, I just completely took it that they're his friends.
I mean, I think they are.
That, their spirits are there, and he has a healthy skepticism, but, it's actually his friends.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
The three of them leave. The elders don't come to meet them, which apparently pisses off Karsa quite a bit.
That was a mean thing to do, right? No matter what, these three they're just leaving the village and trying to do something. Can't people just come and say bye?
I guess.
It's like the entire village ignores them, right?
Mm-hmm. So, after that, he goes on raid to the Rathid, right? And he finds the first war party of like 10 people and kills them apparently in one go, kills like 4 people in one go, or while sprinting on foot or something.
So, I think he kills like 8 of them. He doesn't leave anyone for the others, isn't it?
I don't actually remember if he leaves
sort
any
of,
for the others.
I think the other two get pissed off that Karsa didn't leave them anyone to kill. And except for the youth, what's his name?
We don't actually know the name, but House of Chains.
Okay.
So that's that. Then he goes to the village, right? After he essentially caused an uproar in all the tribes, which is quite smart in a way, right?
Yeah, that is, yeah. No, all his strategies are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Each time he plans anything, a battle or a standoff or anything. Karsa is pretty smart in all these things.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't understand sarcasm, but he's smart in all the other ways.
Which is interesting, right? Because he doesn't get humor or sarcasm, but he's capable of picking up languages just by hearing people talk. He's a very capable strategist. He is a survivalist. He can ride very well. He's incredibly good with the sword. And he just doesn't get it that Dayliss bangs Byrov for like however long it takes. Like, fuck's sake, Karsa.
Didn't you feel bad for him? I really felt bad for him when I read it for the first time. Because he's such an angsty teen type of character, when you first meet him. He's praying, he sounds like such a dutiful guy. He wants to do something nice for the tribe. And this girl he has such high hopes on.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty mean to him, aren't they? When we first see them, Dayliss and Byrov, they sort of laugh at him, or I think Byrov, taunts him about Dayliss.
Yes, but on the other hand, wouldn't you do the same if someone was to hit on your boyfriend or something? Like, he's mine, back off.
No, but they're being mean about it.
They're mean about it because Karsa keeps coming back.
Let's forget it.
I mean, he doesn't get the message the first 15 times. Might as well be mean to him. So, okay, all that happens. And then they go to the village. And that's when Karsa's first realization strikes him. That Palk's a phony, as you said in your notes.
Yeah.
And the women in his village aren't actually morally superior or above this. They're not particularly loyal to their men if this would happen to them as well. And what's interesting is Karsa doesn't dismiss this outright. He doesn't say, no, you're lying. Palk is actually a badass warrior and he's just mad, right? He thinks about it and remarks, this might be plausible. This might actually have happened. He doesn't fully believe it until he gets to the lake, but it's there. It's gnawing at him. Well, hang on, maybe Palk is actually lying.
No, but maybe he just thinks this chief's wife is trying to confuse him. He doesn't really care about it because, he has 11 women in his queue.
Yeah.
He just listens and doesn't care. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Do you want to talk about it? I mean, we can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, but that one thing was nice. I really like the chief's wife. The way she puts him down and, he's so surprised that they're not struggling or
fucking, alright, yeah, I mean, which one of us is going to take a seat? Like, all of you. Alright then.
No,
okay.
I mean, he's shocked that, our Urid women are the greatest and they wouldn't have complied like you women and stuff. And she just laughs at him like, you think your women are something, they're going to behave differently with their riders and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's something, it's such an insulated society, that's what you're led to believe, right? That you are somehow superior, your men are somehow stronger, your women are somehow better, more superior and more pure and stuff. Yeah, so that was nice. The chief's wife, I think she was the first one to start shutting him down with his ideas about his grandfather and his tribe and stuff. And I think, is this where we, sort of get a better idea about blood oil?
They talk about it and how it brings like madness and stuff and lust and battle raids and stuff to men, but the effects of it last longer on women, which I'm not sure if that should be the case, but anyhow, Tatral seems to have these sort of effects. And then later when Karsa discusses it with a certain Seven Cities native with blue eyes, they talk about this, and this Seven Cities native talks about the...
Yeah, why are we not telling his name? I mean,
okay, it's Leoman. Leoman, whatever. It's Leoman. So Leoman talks about the effects of Tatral and on magic, and talks about this red rusty ore, and Karsa's like, hang on, we have that. We put that in our blood oil. And then he goes like, what is blood oil? Well, it's this thing that we drink before we all put in our weapons, and we kiss our blade, and it gives us battle lust and battle rage and lust. And like, hang on, where are you from again? It's like Zenobagis Mountains. It's like, okay, don't tell anyone you have this, because if the Empire learns about this, you're fucked.
Yeah, true.
Karsa, or at least blood oil, seems to have magic deadening effects because of House of Tatral.
I'm just wondering, how exactly do they take blood oil? Is it like smell, or do they have to taste it, or what does kissing the sword mean? Like just skin contact?
Presumably they taste it.
They taste it.
Presumably, because I think breathing it in also works, the fumes or whatever, or
because
the rust or the...
Yeah, he holds it to the horse and stuff, right?
I don't know.
Oh yeah, he shows his sword to Havoc to make it run faster, and when he's about to charge something.
Yeah. If I recall, he also holds the woman that he, in Silver Lake to his sword, and then she goes apeshit.
Not sword, his armor.
Whatever it was, I don't remember. Anyway, the point is, yes, I guess
with blood oil, his whole armor and everything.
I guess breathing it in also works then.
No, but you don't know. Maybe she had to taste it. Who knows? It's not clear. Okay. Let's agree. It's not clear.
It's not clear, but it seems to have certain magic deadening properties owing to the Tatral inside it, right? So, Karsa is anti-magic to some degree, owing to the blood oil that he has, right?
So, but if blood oil has Ototaral and all Teblor are using it, then why is he the only one who's anti-magic?
He uses it by the score, apparently.
Sorry.
I mean, I don't think he's the only one who's anti-magic. He's the only one we see him use so excessively.
The Sunni tribe, they're almost entirely enslaved. And nobody is worried about them being anti-magic or anything.
Because they don't drink Otatral by the fucking barrel full or something. I mean, have you seen how much Karsa downs of that shit? He puts it in his armor, he drinks it, he tastes it.
He doesn't drink blood oil.
I mean, okay, that's true. He doesn't. But he would if he had enough.
Okay, don't diss the guy, please. He has other things you can tell.
Everything Karsa seems to have is like gleaming with the amount of blood oil he puts on it.
Is he the only one who is, constantly...
Yes! Yes! He sits on like the desert and just like puts a blood oil on his sword like he's gonna fucking face anyone. Like he's alone in the desert and just has enough to coat that sword.
Yeah, he
has
does that,
a lot.
right? Yeah.
He has a lot of it. Of course he's anti-magic when he has 2 liters worth of the stuff.
The armor thing was a bit much, I thought. He finds that ironwood armor and coats that entire armor
And
with blood oil.
if it works, it works. That's, I think, all on the blood oil. So, you may notice, if you've read the book, Karsa gets captured a lot. He gets captured by Damisk and Silga. He gets captured by the Malazans. He gets captured again.
My count was 3. 3 times he gets captured.
He escapes with Leoman, and then he's in Naraku, and he feels chained again because of the influence of Urigal. So, he doesn't particularly seem to like that, being captured business. I am getting a bit ahead of myself again. So, one thing we didn't touch upon, and one thing that's important to Karsa's early arc, is his vows. He vows to do a lot of things, and some of those things end up blowing back in his face spectacularly. And the big part of his later arc is that he says, I'm done with pointless vows. I'm not gonna vow that every random guy that I meet is suddenly my enemy. At the very end of the book, he just after all is said and done, the dust settles, he just walks up to the fore and I have a message for the adjunct. And it's okay, what's up? And once long ago I swore that the Malazans are my enemy and no longer, and then turns around and leaves.
Oh, that was good.
I once vowed that the Malazans are my enemy, no longer, and then just turns around and leaves, and the force is do we know the guy? And everyone is yeah, I think it's better for us that we didn't try to challenge him. So, a big part of Karsa's arc in House of Chains is overcoming those figurative and literal chains, and growing as a character to not do stupid things on impulse.
Yeah, I think that was a good contrast with freeing Calm, and then not freeing the other.
Oh god, that was fucking stupid.
We know it's stupid only now, but he has good reasons.
He has good reasons and she turns around and kills his friend.
But yeah, how could he know that? He doesn't even blame Bairoth for what happens.
If you view what happened with Kalm symbolically, it's Dilum was immediately ready to defend his war leader. Bairoth wasn't.
Which was a smart thing to do.
It is the smart thing to do, but if Kalm wanted Karsa dead, Karsa would die, and there's nothing Bairoth would do about it. So, there is a question of loyalty. Carry on.
Yeah?
You were saying, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so we see Calm, and we see that Karsa is immediately ready to free her. He thinks it's an independent being who is trying to break free from this rock and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, just a slight aside. You remember when Bairoth is trying to help her stand up and Karsa stops him? Saying, you should not be touching her.
Yeah.
Wasn't that really amazing? He's just gone around raping so many people, and then he sees this...
Awfully considerate of him.
Exactly. Because even though they called that a demon in their language and all, and he has no idea of what this being is capable of, he still, he has that mercy even then.
And he immediately vows that he will find whoever did this to her and kill them.
Yeah. That's one of the things. But, much later, I think when he's walking through Telan and he sees a lot of Jag, was it? Who were trapped under the rocks? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, and he decides not to save any of them. He actually says that I'm not going to undo things which I don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
I think almost all of the things which was set up in the first half, I think we get a full circle for almost all of them. We see him being extremely protective of his gods, extremely pious, and he doesn't allow Bairoth to question anything about their gods. And then ultimately he basically kicks them out.
He kills one, yeah.
Wasn't that a nice thing when they tell him the crippled god will take you and all that? And they tell him that, to convince him that even your crippled god is chained, so that's why you belong to this house and all.
And then he's like, I will free him from sin. I am pleased, and then I will kill him. God damn it.
So yeah, that was one thing. And we see nearly all of those things. He's one of his gods, and then he actually, I think somewhere along the way, he starts realizing that it's not always good to, open your mouth and tell what's happening. It's okay to lie.
Too many words.
Too many words, but then he thinks that words should not be deceitful. He tells exactly what he's thinking, and he doesn't care about the consequences. But I think somewhere with Torvald and all that, he starts deciding, he even pretends to have lost his mind, right?
Yeah.
So almost his entire character, whatever is set up in the first half, almost all of it is destroyed by the second half. He hates his father, and I think at the end he thinks, I think I should go and talk to my father, and to my grandfather, I'm not going to tell him anything. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the exact quote.
Another thing I noticed about Karsa's god is, at some point in his journey, he realizes he's been played. Right? He's been used. Yeah. Urigal uses him for his own needs. And yet, Karsa doesn't stop. He doesn't somehow call quits on his journey and say, you know what, no, that's enough. I'm no longer going to be used by any god. That's it. Because he has vowed to see, to help his god, right? To see through the mission he has. And then he takes them to the cave where they were, killed, basically, and left. And says, okay, now we're done. Now you're going to stop using me and the tableau, and you will have to get on devices. And, okay, that's cool for Karsa, but for the Unbound, the Seven Faces of the Rock, they're being hunted by other Tlanimas, like Onrak. Yeah. So that's trouble. They can't exactly leave him. And they keep trying to manipulate him, so Karsa just kills them, right? Karsa makes... Well, yeah, only one of them. Well, technically, he doesn't kill her yet. He slices her in half and then puts her in a backpack and leaves. When he doesn't actually believe, even when he knows for a fact that his gods are false, and his gods have played him and his people, he remains not necessarily pious, but loyal to the cause and the vow that he made before, because it would be unlike him to go back on his vow.
I didn't see it as him, trying to uphold his vow, because I thought it was just him playing the whole game to see where they were leading. I think he just wanted to see it to the end.
Not sure. Anyway, for that matter, he could do the very same with a lot of other sort of things, like, slavery in the Malazans. But he was always very eager to be rid of him, of the chains that were, holding him. And Urigal is the first person that puts the most chains on Karsa. The ghosts that Heborix sees trailing him are Urigal's doing. He is encumbered, in a way, by these souls of the people he killed. So, if it was up to Karsa, if he didn't, I think, this isn't necessarily true, but I think if he hadn't vowed to do anything with Amas, he would have just said, okay, enough, leave me alone, and if you don't, I'll kill you.
Yeah, but I thought he wanted to, because they were cheating the entire tableau, right? So probably he wanted to take it to the end and see exactly what they were up to. Maybe.
But I think he could just probably strong-arm them away from the entire tableau if he wanted. But maybe you're right. I think it's much more probable that you're right. But that's my take on it.
Do you want to talk about the dogs?
Yeah, another one of Karsa's stupid vows, that he vows that the three-legged dog will be getting fat in his fireplace and it dies 20 pages later. That it will be so, and then the dog dies.
Oh, that's really sad, yeah.
It's a learning experience for Karsa, right? But the dogs, as you mentioned, is just another one of those situations where Karsa is being intelligent and cunning and understands how dogs work and how the pack works and how to manipulate it. It would probably be far easier and less dangerous to just kill the dogs, because they have swords that are 2 times as heavy and large as the dogs are. So, had he wanted to, he probably could kill each one of the dogs and not worry about it.
No, but they became an asset to him, right? So, yeah, as you say, he was pretty smart.
Yeah.
Getting the dogs, then getting the horse and all that.
Mm-hmm. It's, on one hand, it's expedient to have the dogs with you as a pack. On the other hand, he has to go out of his way to do it. He has to wait until it's nighttime. He has to wait until it's clearing. He leaves Byrov behind.
Those are not major inconveniences, to get a pack of dogs. It's not like he has to leave an apartment and go do it. He's anyway on the trail.
Yes.
He slips away and, gets himself a whole pack.
He's also been chased by, the Rathid. The Rathid? I don't remember.
I think
the
so.
Sunid?
Yeah.
the ones that weren't actually enslaved. And he has to waste basically an entire day to get the dogs. It's a trade-off, but it's a trade-off he's willing to take, and he calculates the risk and understands it. And he's like, yeah, you know what? I'll just go through with it. Pretty smart. Good job, Karsa.
No, he's very good with animals. Even when he chooses the jag horse, when he chooses Havoc, he first sees this other proud stallion. Yeah, and then he says, the pack needs you, and he leaves it behind. So, one more thing to he's pretty smart.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
So hard not to talk about the other books, right?
I don't particularly mind it, honestly, because I haven't read the other books in a while, but I guess it's killing you. So, he gets captured for the first time, and...
Oh, the first time, right.
The first time he gets captured is by Silga, right, in Silver Lake. Silga is bad. He's humanity at its worst. So...
Does House of Chains have extremely irredeemable characters?
Yes.
There's no nuance, right? You don't feel sort of maybe these are grey characters and all.
I think the first four books have this, where there's basically a central character that's bad. Well, except for Guns of the Moon, I guess. Guns of the Moon has Raced. Raced is pretty bad.
Who?
Raced in Guns of the Moon is.
But then we don't see him doing bad stuff, And because we see him at the end of Deadhouse Gates, isn't it where we see him banter with?
I think it's Memories of Ice, but yes.
Memories of Ice, yeah. So I like Raced, so I don't feel anything bad about him. But Silgar and Bidithel have, there's no redemption for them, and we don't get many characters like that.
There's also Corbolo in Deadhouse Gates or Pormqual, but Pormqual dies, so fuck him. And someone else, which I will not mention. Book 3, Caspanian, who does get a redemption arc in the end, but...
Exactly, everyone has some...
In the grand scheme of things, he's pretty unequivocally bad, and we root against him, no matter what everyone else does.
See, it's not about...
In this book. Yes?
It's not about just the character, it's about the way he's portrayed in the writing, right? Panion, ultimately we are made to feel bad for him. But these two, it's not possible to do anything with them. Silgar and Bidithel, there's just no coming back from what they are. They're 100% bad and there's nothing, there's no nuance there. It's just that. All I'm saying is we don't get many such characters in the whole of Malazan.
Yeah.
And this book has 2 of them.
Right. So the first time Karsa gets captured, he's still a bit, of an airhead. He's still convinced, sort of Tableau superiority and sees the Sunid, right, the fallen Tableau, and thinks weakness. They're weaklings. They have forsaken the Tabler ways for Lowlander ways, and now look at them. He doesn't make the connection that, okay, this is the fate that will eventually befall all the Tableau if we continue like this. And so, when the first time he gets captured, he still feels a bit, you know exactly what I mean. He's still arrogant as fuck. You're like, whatever, I'm gonna get out of this no matter what.
Yeah, he thinks it's like a big joke, and the next minute he's going to escape and run away.
It's not even that. It's like they tie him with chains to a log, and the guy breaks the log.
And these were chains designed for Teflon. These are not just ordinary ones.
It's madness.
Yeah,
and he even pushes an arrowhead out of his back with his muscles stretching and flexing, and that's when he meets his first foil in Torvald Nom.
The Nom, the Daru.
Right. This is the first time we get to see too many words and their effect on Karsa.
Oh, is it the first time he tells that?
Yes, I think the first time he says too many words to Torvald.
Do you remember? Yeah, I think when he meets Leoman, he tells him that when Leoman talks some roundabout stuff, he asks him, "Are you from Darujistan?"
Yeah.
Because he thinks anyone talking, stuff like that, they have to be from Darujistan. Right, yeah.
Yeah, because Karsa asks him if all Daru are like it. Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, but then if he meets Krupp next...
Oh, God. We're digressing too much. And Torvald's like, okay, I want you to drown me because I don't want to be captured here anymore. And he's like, well, actually, I had a change of heart. Well, I didn't. And then he just drops the log again. In goes Torvald. And then Torvald gets out. And you didn't need to do that. And you know what, Lowlander, you actually have my respect now. I'm listening.
Yeah, but remember when he asks him to drown him or, crush him or something? Mm-hmm. I think Karsa tells him that, this is not going to be a quick death and I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Isn't that like the first time he like apologizes to someone?
Yes.
So, it's not all bad, basically.
Of course not. If he was, he wouldn't be here.
Yeah, but then it's pretty convincing when you start reading, right? That Karsa is the ultimate bad, the ultimate 100% bad guy.
No, I don't think.
No, that's how I thought.
So Torvald avoids drowning, and Karsa's like, hey, you know what? You actually have my respect now. So can you break me out? And he's like, okay, sure. And then he just breaks the log, as I mentioned, which is madness. The two of them get out.
Yeah, and then when they actually escape, that was a good scene, right? When he thinks that one of the Sunid insults him, he just goes ahead and breaks the whole thing.
And then of course he goes witness.
And he shows some prudence in not killing that Sunid immediately, because they tell him that if he kills them, he's going to get caught again. Like, even if his chains are free, he can't escape. So he takes that into consideration. Maybe before he was captured, he wouldn't have thought such things. Somebody insults him and the next thing to do is to kill them. But here he has to stop, think about it, and not kill him so that he can escape. And what does he do? Torvald immediately runs away, and this guy says, I'm too good for that, I'm not going to run away. And he goes on a rampage, right?
And he tells him, you have 50 heartbeats and then I will go after the city. And then Torvald leaves and is like, yeah, fuck, I'm not winning 50 heartbeats, I'm going to use it now. And he kicks in doors in the village to find different things. And eventually he happens upon his old weapons, his armor. He dons the armor, he paints it with blood oil, and he goes on a rampage. And then the Malazans arrive, and suddenly, bad news.
Yeah, they have a good mage, basically, who can...
Ebron, I think it was, the mage from the Ashok regiment, that
Ebron.
essentially almost cast a spell that would normally kill a human being, and then kind of just shrugs it off and just keeps going.
It's the Dendravi spell, the one they used to control Dendravi, basically. That's the one they use on Karsa, and even that I think destroys it in a few days. They assume he's in severe pain because of that.
Obviously.
And I think pain goes away immediately, and even the sorcery goes away quite soon. And sort of that is where he starts pretending that he's lost his mind, right?
Yeah, when he's first captured and put in chains. And he's just like, oh, we can't there's no wagon big enough to carry him, so we'll just put him on the bed of like the stable and we'll just carry the table with it. Or rather the wagon bed, rather than... So they just carry the entire wagon along with cars because nothing else will fit him.
And they even load the entire thing onto the ship, But it's really sad, they just keep him chained like that for months together or something.
You felt bad about him. I didn't. I'll be honest. I really didn't.
What?
I did not. I'm sorry.
You thought he deserves to be put in chains like that?
To a certain extent, yes.
I don't know about you, but I felt very bad for him.
It was a bit poignant. It wasn't like fun, It's like reading Felicin, right? It's not fun. It makes you feel bad.
Yeah, but nobody deserves that type of treatment.
My personal dislike for Karsa aside.
Yeah. But you started saying you liked him, and now all of a sudden you're saying it's okay if he's chained. So
Karsa after chapter 4 is a lot better when he goes out to the Jagodan and stuff. But until he learns to be humbled by the Malazans, by Torvald, by Leomund, he's still a bit of an arrogant ass. And a rapist, and a murderer, and you get the idea. So, to some extent, he deserves it, yes. One other thing that I found quite interesting about Karsa is, we mentioned this earlier, but his affinity for learning a lot of languages. He learns Daru from Torvald, he learns Malazans by listening to the soldiers, he learns the Seven Cities language, whatever Leomund speaks later, quite quickly. Quite smart in that regard. What else is there? Also, at some point he gets bashed over the head with a shovel and then pretends he lost his mind. So that was fun. He also goes unconscious a lot. Like, he loses consciousness a lot throughout the book. For the entire, chapter 3 and 4, he's just unconscious for half the time.
For one thing, it's really clever to, not show us the passage of time. It would have been boring, right? Yeah, it's just a nice way to keep the story moving. And that way we are locked into his POV. So... I think it's when he's pretending to be, checked out. I think that's when he starts, questioning himself,
Yeah, he starts losing his sanity. He's like, am I actually insane or am I just pretending? And he later says, he originally would say too many words and shut up and you'd talk too much to Torvald. And then when they discuss their partnership, Karsa's like, okay, I will only kill you if you try to betray me or kill me. I'm like, what about talking too much? That is probably a curse I'm going to have to live with.
Yeah.
So,
But I think somewhere he acknowledges that his words were like, food for his soul or something.
it was the only thing that kept him sane, yes.
Yeah.
So, on one hand, he considers Torvald's location as to be a curse. On the other hand, it saves him. So he's a bit split in that regard. Which I found hilarious, because even from then on, Karsa is not particularly the type of guy to engage in long speeches. He is in later books, but not in this one. Hang on. Right, Malazan is captured. Eventually, after presumably fainting another 40 times, he presumably calls up a storm. It's written in the text that everyone tells him to send the storm away, and Karsa just grumbles 2 words, and no one can understand them. And then they throw him overboard, and it's revealed in the text that what he was kept saying was just go away to the storm, leave, I don't want to die. He's not going to say go away to the people that chained him, because the alternative is dying, being thrown overboard. So, in that regard, he's quite savvy. Karsa a year ago would probably just say, go fuck yourselves, I'm not doing anything, and just sit there and die. Karsa now, the third time he gets captured, is I'm just going to put down my weapons and get captured.
Oh.
But we're jumping ahead again. So, after the storm, and he escapes, and he gets to the Nascent Realm, which is a fragment of Umberland, right? And then he's, unfortunately for him, probably, locked with Torvald again. And I think it's in the Nascent that Karsa first really starts to develop his relationship with Torvald, where he considers him more or less an equal.
Yeah, I mean, they actually have they have to work together there, right? Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I think he's still bound on the wagon bed, and is about to drown in knee deep water, and he feels incredibly poignant about oh god damn it, I lived through all of this to drown in knee deep water.
Oh, but then he tells a nice thing to I think at that exact scene he tells Torvald that nothing more can be asked of you, Torvald, no at all. And the guy feels, he feels bad for him, and ultimately they figure out a way to escape.
If there's one thing we know of the Eater in House of Chains, it's that they are full of hubris, and they tell Karsa to kneel. And Karsa's I kneel to no one. And then Torvald turns around and says, I could kneel for both of us and you'll be fine. But that's the thing that happens.
I mean, don't the Eater have some sense? They see this 7-foot guy with a face, he doesn't have a tattoo yet. They just see this guy who's probably not normal. And then they just tell him, just kneel in front of us.
Karsa actually says they've never fought a tableau before, and Torvald's how do you know? And then he just swings his sword, kills 2 people, they were in my reach. So they don't actually know what he is. The closest thing they have to that is probably the Barcast and the legends, right? Compared to a tableau, the Barcast look like normal humans. So they didn't know what the fuck that guy was, and their sorcery doesn't work on him. So, shit. And Torvald's reaction to this, I already mentioned, is hilarious. It's hysterical. I love Torvald. I could have knelt for both of us. I could have knelt twice and it would be fine.
Yeah, and then he goes on to the captain's cabin, right? And he feels the sorcery there, right? There is a mage Idul who tries to
cast a spell on him and then fails, and then he spears him to the wall.
Yeah, but do you remember he says something like he could feel a presence there, and even that presence he was able to throw away. Was it his tableau god, or was it crippled god?
Judging by the fact that it's an Eater, it's probably the crippled god. I mean, according to Thrall, anyway, that says that the Eater now serves the crippled. So
that's what they're all disappointed that he's not cooperating with them, the tableau gods and the crippled god.
So that's how the Solanda ends up in wherever it is where Gessler and Stormy and Truth and go find.
Yeah, and that was Torvald's work, right? Putting all the heads into small bags.
That's certainly one hell of a backstory for a ship that's commandeered by grey-skinned, seal-skin-wearing warriors and driven by black-skinned oarsmen with no heads. So some random-ass giant just came and killed everyone, and then his friends stuffed all the heads to a bag and left.
No, but when you read it the first time, how was all this? Were you able to get everything?
No.
I was utterly confused. I didn't know that who is the grey-skinned fellows and who are the black-skinned fellows. And I think it even says that some of the headless oarsmen, some of them are Idur actually. They're not entirely Andi.
I think they're Andean humans, because the Solanda was a trade ship.
Andean humans.
It was a trade ship sanctioned to the Rift Valley, so that's where the Andi came from.
And I didn't know that these were recently killed fellows. Those few Eater on the deck and the captain and all. So actually, they can't really move the cylinder, right?
No.
Because it's just knee-deep water. So they just leave it around. Do you know how many times they keep resupplying? They come across a ship, they take some supplies. They come across another ship, takes more supplies. Did you notice it? I don't know. I found it very funny.
They're crafty, they're...
It's just two people, and I don't know how many supplies they need,
I mean, is Karsa really just one person, though? Like, doesn't he come from more than one?
Sort of, but he's...
Anyway, digression over. So, after the two of them leave the Nascent Realm, they end up with Keeper, right? Who we don't actually know who he is in House of Chains. We have a pretty good idea. We don't know who he is, actually.
We don't really know at any point, right? We're not explicitly told that this is him.
Don't remember, actually. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not.
I don't know. I was told by someone. I never guessed or anything.
Anyway, it's someone. It's Keeper, right?
A Napan who has emptied half the RN treasury and is faking his own death, right? I think that should be enough to... In hindsight, I'm sure that's enough to know who exactly Keeper is.
We're not going to get into it now. The point is, Keeper's a tree. He's massive. He has, presumably, a big lizard skeleton, which is totally a chain. By the way, it's totally a Kill Hunter. I'm calling it now. It's probably not a Kill Hunter, but it looks like Chain Chamal. And he built, presumably, an entire tower to house the lizard, and it just wouldn't fit, so he had to keep growing it higher. And then Karsa comes in and just tries to sass him and I deal to nobody. He just cracks his ribs with a single hit. And Karsa just loses his mind. Hang on.
No, even when he's fainting, he gives him a look of admiration and then faints. Are you thinking that is a Kel Hunter? Because some of it looks like, a T-Rex.
I think it's a Chain Chamal. I don't necessarily think it's a Kel Hunter specifically, but I think it could be a Chain Chamal.
The way he was mentioning about the bones and how the upper limbs were so small, and that's why he had the scale was off.
So Keeper breaks his ribs, and then he leaves and gets ambushed by Silgar, because Silgar, you cannot trust the bastard to die probably.
Yeah, that was a little boring. Silgar keeps coming back again and again, and
yeah. So they capture him again for this is the third time, right?
Yeah.
And rather than trying to fight back, he just goes, okay, you know what? Karsa a year ago would have charged them and probably died. Karsa now just surrenders. So that's growth in a way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean...
And so Silgar just puts on some chains on him, which definitely don't fit him. And he's like, I'm just gonna...
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna kill you. I'm just going to maim you completely. I'm going to cut off all your limbs and just keep you as a toy or some such. I'm an asshole.
A plaything.
And then because Silgar's a fucking idiot, they happen upon Malazans, and Karsa doesn't have a brand or a mark or anything that denotes him as a slave, so he kidnapped a guy with no brand, which, on the one hand, good on the Malazans for not allowing this. On the other hand, the flimsy excuse of he doesn't have a brand, so let's brand him with the face tattoo.
Yeah.
Is, really, guys? That's the problem here. Not the slavery part. The problem is just he didn't have a mark.
Yeah, but then they didn't need slaves for the mines, right? So it was all sanctioned slavery.
Which is
and sort of that is what the essay. We haven't yet started discussing. I think the entire essay is basically that.
What exactly?
That even there are no real saviors here. Then I actually forgot that who gave him the face tattoo. I thought it was Silgar, and turns out, it's the Malazans.
Yeah. I mean, I don't actually know how I felt about that. On the one hand, it's a bit poignant. On the other hand, it's like...
He deserves it, yeah? Is that what you thought?
I don't think that he deserves it. I just didn't think it would be very important. I honestly might even have a fantasia, because I just couldn't picture Karsa with, a face tattoo. I just kept picturing a big bald dude with long hair and a sword. I don't know.
No, actually, I keep forgetting his face tattoo. It's just that all fan art are really good,
Yes.
They show him with the proper thing, and I keep forgetting that he has that seashell armor and all that.
So, right, he gets captured the third time. He meets Leoman, which totally isn't Leoman. We don't technically know it's Leoman yet, but it's totally Leoman because, the seventh is native with blue eyes that we mentioned earlier. Leoman.
When did you catch that was Toblakar?
I think someone told me before I even got the House of Chains, and I just didn't worry about it. I didn't really care. It didn't even seem important. I didn't even remember who he was. Just some random guy, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, he gets to Iraq eventually, cool. Which, on one hand,
Oh, I was too shocked to continue, when I found the reveal. I was like, because I have been talking about Toblakai, on the sub with my friend
On
and
the other
everything.
hand, I think it's a bit misleading because Toblaka in the House Gates is a fucking idiot. He's portrayed as an idiot.
And Karsa is somebody smart.
Toblaka barely speaks.
But it makes sense, because we see Toblakai through... We see him through Heboric mainly, right?
You could say he's pretending on the one hand, but on the other hand, we see Karsa in Araku before Third House Gates, and he's a lot not stupid. But he does also... Yes?
Sorry, I'm just saying that, usually when you say that this person is being a strong, silent type, it does come across as being dumb also, right? You're not going to think he's some super smart guy just because he's a good sportsman or hunts lizards for food and all that.
Anyways, I mean, the first thing he does is say, I won't talk to you anymore, so I vow, and then that's it. Anyway, digression over again. So yeah, I only found out Toblakai was Karsa before I even got to House of Chains, and then I didn't actually mind that at all. I just thought, oh, okay, cool, neat. I think it isn't particularly obvious until you get to Seven Cities. From then on, yeah, you can probably take a hint that big dude, wooden sword, 7 cities native blue eyes, flails, you can take a hint. But until then, it's a bit more vague.
I think plenty of people got about his wooden sword.
Eventually, for the last time, he actually manages to escape. The Malasans catch up to him. He escapes, mind you, with Leoman's help, and Leoman actually goes to find Mebra. And we know Mebra from the House Gates. He was the guy that had the Book of Drishna. He gave that to Kalam. And then Kalam moved on. And Leoman just goes, oh, okay, Mebra, I guess, turned. Because the Malasans are chasing us through a secret entrance. And they shouldn't know about it. Well, I guess I'll kill him eventually. And Karsa goes like something along the lines of, do you kill all the people who you don't trust? And he's like, well, if I did that, I'd have scant little company.
Yeah.
Which I think is extremely telling of Leoman's character. He doesn't trust anyone. He is faithless. He doesn't much care for this rebellion, religious aspects. He's just here because he's a freedom fighter. So...
But yeah, why does he not kill Silgar?
Because he's sadistic. Because he's yes!
Karsa.
He chops off his limbs and takes him as a fucking plaything and he contracts leprosy and almost dies.
Yeah, but Karsa is not exactly a sadist.
Yes, he is.
This is the only time he tortures someone.
Yes, I'm not going to argue it wasn't deserved, because Silgar deserves that worse, but that's why he did it.
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying that, it's slightly out of character.
Yes, maybe.
He has no harm, he has no doubt killing people and all that. He doesn't hesitate. But to torture, it's completely against his...
He does say torture is not the Tabor way. And Leoman actually talks him out, but tells him not to do it. But he does it anyway. And then he regrets it. At the end of the House of Change, I should have killed you immediately.
I think one thing is because, he put those tight cuffs on him. Maybe that just irritated him and he wanted to cut off his hands and feet. But even then, it's extremely out of character. But don't call him sadistic. He's just this one guy.
So, okay. Setting that sadistic streak of Karsa aside, what else is there to discuss? So... he comes to the camp in Darago, right? And we see most of the early part of that House Gate, where he's a bodyguard, he fails in protecting the Sadiq Elder, and he finds Felicin, and yada yada. And a lot of his storyline in House of Chains in Darago is actually, first of all, his shrine that he has dedicated to his gods, first of all, and his two friends, and his interaction with Sheikh, because Sheikh in House of Chains is very conflicted, shall we say, and we'll leave it at that because that's a whole big can of gold I'm not going to open. And Toblakai, Karsa, mirrors that conflict in that he too is conflicted and torn between what he wants and what his gods want, and what is better for him and his people, and again what his gods want. For Felicin, those two goals mostly align because killing Tavor and killing everyone are close enough. For Karsa, no chains, and chains are direct opposites, so he can't have both. And so he fashions the seven faces in the rock to create them, right, and summon them, so that they can meet him and talk to him, and so he can dispel them and banish them and tell them to stop toying with a tableau. But he also makes statues of his friends because it is a way for him to remember them, he fashions statues of his friends because he wants to remember them and because he values their input. Even Byroth, who is sarcastic and a bit of an asshole to him, Tellum, who lost his mind and doesn't speak much, he values them as well, and because he feels responsible for them, even if he's arrogant and a prick. He generally takes words very seriously, and thus anything that he says, one example of this is Thorvald saying, "Lead me," and are you sure you want me to lead you, Lowlander? And just lead me out of here. There is an implicit relationship of responsibility between Karsa and his friends, and the fact that the two of them died weighs on him, weighs on his conscience, because he failed at leading them. And this resonates a lot with him, because Byroth's last words were, "Lead me, war leader," before he was slain,
And he was killed, directly because of what Karsa said. No, they asked Karsa, "Will you give us the tableau details?" And he says, "Of course, it's not going to matter because, you guys have nothing you have nothing on us." As soon as he says that, they kill Byroth because Byroth has been holding off, right? He's not told them anything about the tableau, their geography or anything. So, at some point he would have realized that Byroth was killed just because he opened his mouth and said, "Yeah, sure, I'll give you all the tableau details."
And so that weighs on him. Yeah, he obviously feels guilty, and he's right in feeling guilty because he killed the Byroth, but that aside, he feels guilty. And so Karsa goes through a crisis of faith, which is essentially already begun from his journey all the way to Raraku, and it solidifies here, and then it culminates in his journey out of Raraku, through the passes, through the city, he skirts, through the mountains, where he finds Dayliss, and he says, "I'm not gonna fight you because you're gonna kill me, because you've been running non-stop for 3 days and 3 nights, and just, what the hell, I'm just gonna leave. Let me just give you a word of warning. Just up ahead, there's 2 guys, and if you meet those guys, something really bad will happen, so just avoid them."
When people say that Karsa has plot armor and all, I think this is one of the reasons, because as far as you can see from the text, there's really no reason for Relandras to not fight him. Just because he ran for 3 days and he didn't get tired, that doesn't mean he's something great that Relandras can't face in a battle.
I think Relandras also is tired because he too has been running for 3 days and 3 nights. And at this point, if you've been chasing a quarry for 3 days and he's been running non-stop, then you just have some semblance of respect for him. He's running it through knee-deep snow and he just doesn't care. Relandras warns Karsa about Ikarium and Mappo right up ahead, and he's like, "I'm just gonna go meet them, what's gonna happen?" Ikarium goes to him and is like, Karsa goes to Mappo and he's like, "Will you step in my way?" And Mappo returns with something like, "Only if you give us reason to." And then Ikarium comes up and asks Karsa, "Are you my enemy?" And Karsa's like, "Only if you give me a reason to." And they do battle, and Ikarium breaks his sword, and Karsa gets so pissed that he floors him with a fist to the face. Okay. And Mappo just clubs him down the head, just "Oh god, that could have been worse."
Yeah. So, Mappo is like the bouncer, He clubs Ikarium, he clubs Karsa. Anyone who is not following
I think there's even a description of Mappo unstringing his club even before the two of them meet. He just sees them. Oh god damn it! Just unclean
Oh, is that so?
And when Ikarium Karsa knocks out Ikarium, and Mappo just knocks him out in one hit. It's gone a bit. That could have gone better. That could have gone a lot worse though. He's on the one hand he's exasperated because he's tired of this happening. People trying to challenge Ikarium because that's bad.
Yeah.
On the other hand, he's happy that they didn't actually end the world this time around. I think that's more of a cameo rather than an actual story relevant appearance. Karsa is so powerful he can apparently fight Ikarium.
There's no other way his Bloodwood sword gets destroyed, right?
That too, yes. And then
anyway, he goes to Telan. Who leads him there? I think his friends tell him that this is a path you can follow.
Do you have anything to add there? I think it's quite important.
When he meets the jagged, how do you say that? Aramala?
Yes.
Actually, until I read some posts in the subreddit, I didn't realize that they might have slept together, these two.
I don't think so.
Anyway, But this is where he learns most of the stuff about his gods and how to find the jag horses and all that. Then he says bye to Aramala and goes on, right?
One more thing about Aramala is that she's bound by Talon wards, and she's like, she tells him, do not do this ward. This is high Talon. He just turns around and goes, and I am Karsa Orlong of the tableau. Just walks in through the wards, pulls her out, and just leaves.
He kicks away those things.
It's like, what the fuck is it made of? What? Who does that?
Who does that? Karsa, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So then he meets Sinigig, which apparently hides himself in the Jagodan in a chest, which is...
I think before Sinigig, he goes around making his sword, his flint sword, isn't it? Or is it after?
I think...
No, he has the sword before he picks the horse, right?
Maybe.
And he makes his own flint sword, and all the gods, his 7 gods, they sit there and watch. And as soon as he makes it, the first thing he does is slice Sibyl. Yeah.
And that's when the exchange, like, our god is chained, then I will break his chains. We are pleased, and then I will kill him. That's when that happens.
True. And the thing is, this was nice because, he slices Sibyl, her head and right neck and shoulder, right? Like right shoulder and arm. And the remaining body parts is what Ondra comes and takes on. Because he's lost his left side, because he's a left-handed swordsman. So, I think that was fun.
On one hand, I think the line about I will kill him too is like pretty great banter, but on the other hand, it's also genuine character development about Karsa.
Yes.
So on one hand, you have like Karsa going like, yeah, you know what? Maybe he shouldn't be chained, but I will also kill him for putting chains on me, which I think is, if you go back, somewhat unrelated, but if you go back to Memories of Ice, one of the reasons that Lanimas are given to have gone against the Jaghood is because the Jaghood played gods on their mass, and you have the Unbound doing the same thing to the tableau. So history repeats itself.
It is, yeah. That was a nice touch, actually.
That aside,
your favorite, Sinigig, go on.
Sinigig is the Jaghood version of Thorvald, and it's great. He talks a lot, and like Karsa has to indulge him because he knows that it'd be fruitless otherwise. So like, do you know about this? No, but I'm afraid you'll tell me anyway. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. But Dayliss, which is the Jaghood, the tree, first of all, that's extremely poignant.
Yeah.
Just the fact that that's what happened. Anyway, and then Dayliss apparently puts out... Yes, go on.
Yeah, he picks havoc, I'm saying.
Before that, Dayliss allegedly puts out a call for like the Jag horses to come, and they expect like a dozen to come, and then like a few hundreds come, and like, well, hang on, Sinigig just goes like, do you do that? No, I think he did. And that's really interesting because we learn through this that the tableau are actually breeding Jag horses because they have comings and goings to the Carium in the past.
But then that was quite obvious, right?
It was obvious to it wasn't obvious to me. I just thought they were big horses.
Yeah, but it was quite obvious that they have these special horses and they have to, they don't need any saddles and all.
So after Karsa ends with his journey and gets a Jag horse and returns, which the entire journey basically started because A, I need to deliver my gods, and B, I need a horse and a sword.
Yeah.
Which is...
He didn't need a sword when he started.
He just needed a horse. It's like, okay, there are Jag horses on Eldown, and you can get one that's big like Havoc, and like, I'm gonna go get a horse.
And this guy, he's not good at naming things. Do you know what he calls his flint sword? He calls it Beirut Dillam.
It's symbolic. It's for his friends.
And then he calls the horse Havoc.
I have no defense for that. That one is just...
And then he calls the chief's daughter Dayliss. I'm so sorry.
He called the chief's daughter Dayliss, and she's almost disappointed to learn that he doesn't even care about her name.
Yeah.
We're digressing a lot.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a pain to edit. I'm just going to release the whole thing.
Anyway, like I was saying, so he returns after he gets a horse. Karsa is now returning back to the camp, yes. So Karsa returns to the camp, and essentially he has a list of people he wants to kill. Right? He says, I think it was Birithal, I think it was Heboric at some point.
All of them, the entire camp.
Corbulo, Camistrello, a lot of people basically. He first asks about Leoman, and he goes to the Skillar and Felicin and basically asks, where are these people? And then I think it's Felicin that realizes he's going to kill all these people.
Except Leoman.
Except for Leoman. So, in a way, Karsa is on his way to become the hand of justice because he thinks it should be these people should be because he thinks they've gone unpunished long enough. There's Bidithal, obviously, who there's the schemes that people like Orbolo or Febril have been going through. There's poor old Camisello, which honestly, beyond being just the rebel commander, hasn't really done anything bad. He's just tagging along for the ride, and everyone's just tagging the poor guy down. He's even loyal to some extent.
Are you talking about Corbolo?
No, Camis, the high maids.
Okay.
Corbolo is an idiot and an asshole. Nobody likes Corbolo.
Yeah.
So he returns, and first of all, I think the first person I kill is Silga by just stabbing him in the back.
Ah, yeah.
He stabs him in the back of the neck, I think.
Somewhere. He just stabs him.
After that, there's the scene with Bidithal, which we're not going to get into because it's absolutely brutal and deserved for sure, but brutal.
Yeah.
What's after that?
And then he kills the guy with the F name, Febril.
He snaps Febril's spine, yeah.
And I think that's all he kills, right? He doesn't find the others.
Yeah, I think so too. He doesn't find Taborik, he doesn't find Corbolo, he doesn't find Camist.
How did he not find Corbolo and Camist?
Camist, I think, was killed by Pearl, probably, and then Corbolo was captured by Kalam.
I read only Karsa part, so I don't know the others.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Leoman left with Mathok, and
your favorite, Leoman goes along with Korab, right?
Oh yeah, Korab and Mathok. And they leave and they go to Yigatan, and the Mathok is tasked with harassing the 14th until they get there. And Fade to Black, because, Tavor kills Felicin, Fade to Black.
Yeah.
But before the Fade to Black, Karsa comes along and says, you know what, guys, I once vowed that the Manhattans are my enemy, but I see that I was wrong with my youthful folly bullshit. He doesn't say any of that. He just says, you guys are alright, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So, there's that scene. What did you think of the scene where he just walks up to Tavor and just says, you know what, actually, you're fine?
Yeah, but, more than Karsa's side, I was very happy to see Tavor responding, with a simple, dry, we are glad. I think that's all that she tells him.
Something like that.
Yeah, and then where does Karsa go, actually, at the end of House of Change?
He just leaves and heads off into the Dragodan.
He just rides west or something, isn't it?
I'm pretty sure, yes. Hang on, let me...
He rides west. But what was his, what was his goal? Like, where is he headed?
Let me find it, hang on. So he takes Sibal and throws her into Raraku, into the sea.
Yeah.
So she's obliterated. And then just says, sword once more slung on his back, havoc once more solid beneath him. The top like I rode from the shoreline, west into the wastes, and that's the end of the last chapter.
It's a nice way to end it, but it makes no sense. Like, where is he going?
I don't know.
He rides into the sunset. The brave warrior rides into the sunset.
Very odd. Like, in a way, because where would he go? What is his goal at this point?
I don't know. If you take the entire story like a fairy tale or something, this is how it's supposed to end, right? It starts with his village, and then maybe he's going back home or something.
Yeah.
But his home is not west. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So, where is he going? What is his long-term plan? Who knows?
Maybe he wants a mate for Havoc.
Maybe.
He's such an animal lover. He might,
How nice.
Yeah.
Too many words. And I think this is a good time to get into the essay that Steve wrote about Karsa.
Yeah.
Which is a tiny bit on the spoilers all side. But
is it?
I mean, it deals a lot with civilization and Karsa rejecting civilization and hating civilization and stuff.
There's no specifics. It doesn't spoil anything.
I guess so. It doesn't. No, that's true. Anyway, so Karsa, I think, I'm pretty sure it's confirmed, is essentially a deconstruction of the barbarian archetype. On one hand, like Steve says, you have the Dark Horde, right? Attila the Hun, the Goths, the Mongols. The Mongols in popular culture, because the Mongols were actually considerably more civilized than what we actually think of them in Europe today. I don't know if it's any different there, but here they just, portrayed as like barbaric people that came from the west, or the east rather.
From the north.
Well, technically it was the north, because we're fairly north too. And for them, the ones that actually came, they came from the east. But the point is, they were portrayed as barbaric, dark hordes with like... Attila, I think, which is from like 450 BC, Common Era, was described as the scourge of God, a punishment for the unbelievers, for the faithless. And then there's the noble savage trope.
Yeah.
Where a man who is unsullied by the quote-unquote gifts of civilization a pure soul, a soul that has not been touched by the corrupting influence and decadence of organized society and civilization and stuff. Karsa is neither of those things.
But yeah, I'm just saying that at least at the beginning, you sort of assume that he's a noble savage because he has his own code of honor and he believes in his code.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that society is portrayed and all that, it's very back to the roots type of lifestyle, right?
Sort of.
Yeah, but then, as the essay says, like, how much can you push this type of barbarian society?
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to romanticize all this, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
easy to lose the romanticism when you see it through the tableau society.
Yep. Which brings us to our next point, that tableau society, while not by perhaps Karsa's standards, from what he later learns, isn't civilized per se. It is stagnant. It is decadent. It is corrupted, if you will, by the lessons of civilization, as he calls them. It's not just a set of villages and every man for himself and a sense of unity and loyalty. There's raiding, there's rapes, there's that while he may consider them natural now, he may consider them to be the way it's always been and the way it should be now. And while he rejects civilization's gifts of slavery, like above all slavery, both literal and figurative. In the case of literal slavery, because he's bound a lot and as a slave, and Silgar is a slave master, but also figuratively in that these people are loyal to some faraway empire that theoretically should have no control over their everyday lives, and yet the Seven Cities people, for example, try to throw away the chains of the Malazan Empire only to welcome new chains of the Whirlwind Rebellion.
Exactly.
So he thinks this now, but looking back, we can see that the same can be said of the Tableau, where they rejected civilization and they went to the Lydron Plateau after something happened with Mas and the Carium, only for them to sort of get back to this stagnant, decadent society that has been building for centuries now. So the question that Erickson then poses, is this really any better? Are they any less arrogant? Are they any more noble, if you will?
Yeah.
And I think he answers pretty evidently no.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's a very interesting thing to talk about. On one hand, the romanticized notion of barbarism, as you said, of nature, of a man unsullied by civilization, and on the other hand, disease, rape, destruction.
And plain ignorance, weaponized ignorance.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but the other side also, you think of civilization as something that is, in some of the tropes, you think civilization is the bad thing. It's always better to be one with nature and be in a hunting-gathering society and stuff like that, and civilization is the evil thing. But when you see a culture like the Tableau, you think that civilization is the savior, who have their own, legislation and a mode of governance and all that. But then here, there is really, he just paints grey to both barbarianism and civilization. They're both equally grey, and it just makes everything the same. That's what I took out of that essay. The way he has written both Karsa and the Malazans here.
I think when he is not subtly jabbing at a certain article from a certain author, he very specifically wrote Karsa to be this sort of deconstruction of barbarian trope, of the noble savage trope. And
like Conan.
Karsa is very obviously not very Conan-esque. He has similar actions to what Conan does, but not romanticized at all. It's plainly there. He is a murderer. He is a rapist. He is not a good person. We should not romanticize this fellow. But is the gifts of civilization, as he calls them later, any better?
Yeah.
So I think what Erickson concludes is we, as readers ourselves, have kind of stagnated into a sort of... He calls it nihilistic. I don't think I agree. I don't think it's nihilistic.
Oh no, that particular article was about Dust of Dreams.
Yes, I know. Dust of Dreams is very, bleak. But specifically about Karsa and the noble savage trope, Stephen goes on to call it nihilistic. I don't think it's a nihilistic inherently trope. What I do think it is it symbolizes sort of a stagnation in the modern fantasy reader, in that we have accepted in real life outside of escapist literature, the gifts of civilization, as Steve and Karsa want to call them, what he concludes to be taxes and wage slavery and stuff.
Yeah.
We have accepted a loss of freedom. But on the contrary, we then go to embrace freedom as a destructive force of nature, essentially, that doesn't obey to any laws and does what he wants and forces might. Might is right sort of mentality. And do we want that? Is that good? And obviously the answer Steve gives is no. And so I don't believe that there's an inherent nihilism in the notion that we like the noble savage trope. But I do think Karsa just takes that trope and then just dumps all over it, painting it with the blood of his enemies, while not screaming witness, and then returning a few years later and saying, actually, maybe not, maybe I shouldn't do that. Because his nobility comes from him contemplating and understanding the gift that civilization gives, not the fact that he has never been embraced by it. His ignorance isn't his greatest gift. It's the fact that he learns and goes somewhere from there, not his inherent ignorance.
He's open to learning, basically.
Yes.
And I don't know, usually a barbarian hero is not somebody who is going to grow or change or something. He's there to go on quests and, finish the quest and give us entertainment. I think in that way, Karsa was extremely interesting to read.
For sure.
But his philosophy on civilization, I think we'll have a lot more of that in the next few books.
Yeah, for sure.
And those are my favorite ones.
So, the question, of course, becomes, what is the takeaway here? What is the takeaway from Karsa's story?
Witness.
Yeah, that's one takeaway for sure.
I don't know. One of the takeaways I think is this continues the theme of having all morally grey characters. So he's not perfect,
Of course.
He's not. He's far from it. And he doesn't end up being a nice guy or anything. But he is sort of true to himself. He has some honor code which he follows, which makes sense to him. And he's consistent with that. So in that way, I think he deserves a lot of respect. I'm just talking about House of Chains, even here. Okay, yeah. So that was one takeaway, that he deserves respect, regardless of what he does and what all the things he's done already. And because he's learning, he's changing, and ultimately he's sort of, in one way, he's very honorable. What did you take away from his story?
Civilization sucks. No, that's not true. One really interesting conversation I had highlighted with Karsa is his approach to the Malazans and and empires and civilization as a whole. Warps throughout the series, or rather through the book, not the series. It warps through the book because we go from tiny settlement at the edge of his known world to a massive 3-continent-wide spanning empire in 2 chapters. And he has a conversation with House of Nom about 7 cities and why it is the way it is. And Torvald goes, it's a cesspool run by priests, and it's stagnated so long, and then the Malazans came, and suddenly those priests and those warlords were on the run, spiked to the walls, and everyone was happy. And overall, it's a land rife for rebellion. And then Karsa just goes, yeah, I can see why that'd be the case. And he specifically calls it, I've alluded to this before, the lessons of civilization. That one cannot accept dominion of another. They must be the masters of their own fate, even if they implicitly accept all the chains, as aforementioned by Steve, taxes, wage slavery, etc. But they maintain this conceit. Karsa comes along and shatters that conceit entirely, because you are a slave to the Malasan Empire, you are a subject. But the way to throw off those chains isn't to rebel and then install your own self as the new ruler of these people who just kill like half of them. So, on one hand, you have Karsa learning the lessons of civilization, and on the other hand, you have Karsa rejecting the gifts of civilization. And I think this approach to it is very interesting. To have a character actually learn, like I said before, the noble savage is a man that has not actually ever come into contact at all with civilization and doesn't understand it, nor does he care. Karsa learns about it, Karsa engages with it, and then Karsa rejects it. And that's what makes him interesting. So my takeaway is to be a bit more critical of such things, to not take such things for granted. Karsa is not necessarily a good person. He's not. He grows a lot throughout the book. He learns a lot of things. He's consistent. He's honorable. But he's not great. He is rarely compassionate, and when he is, it's a highlight. He's more often than not, he's very blunt, and he's very, what you see is what you get. But he's also not wrong oftentimes about what he says about civilization and stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe we ought to take a more critical approach to how we view this, how we tackle this. That was my takeaway from Karsa's story, at least, because House of Saints is a lot bigger than that. That's one of the takeaways.
But then his story continues, so.
I mean, you said if it was a fairy tale, he would just drive west into the wastes and be gone, and everyone lived better forevermore.
Yeah, actually, he could have disappeared from the story, and I think maybe just Steve liked him so much that he brought him back. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Probably, but nothing comes to mind now. Plus, as Karsa is wont to say, I have probably said too many words.
And I think major takeaway we have from Karsa is he can't name anything.
That is true. That is...
Sorry. I think we should stop.
I think this is a great place to stop, yes. Thank you for So, that was our meandering, rambling look at Karsa. If you have any feedback for us, you'll find us on Twitter and Reddit.
The links are in the description. So for now, have a great day and we'll see you soon.